most of his citizens, those who are in exile, are scattered all over the world, the majority of them being in India, after the brutal suppression of the revolt in Tibet in 1959 by China. The Dalai Lama sought political asylum here on 31st March 1959, and ever since initially there was an exodus of Tibetans to India. So theirs has been a colossal human tragedy with no sight of it coming to an end when their exile is going to come to an end. Now, in this paper, I will be shedding light upon the process of democratization in the Tibetan polity in exile, has been mainly possible under the guidance and vision of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. And there has been, an amazing democratization of the Tibetan political system in exile, and it has been guided by the Buddhist ethics. And in April 1993 at Washington, D.C., His Holiness, in an address, he said that the idea that people can live together freely as individuals, equal in principle, and therefore responsible for each other, essentially agrees with the Buddhist disposition. As Buddhists, we Tibetans revere human life as the most precious gift and regard the Buddha's philosophy and teaching as a path to the highest kind of freedom, a goal to be achieved by men and women alike. Then he went on to say that modern democracy is based on the principle that all human beings are essentially equal, that each of us has an equal right to life, liberty, and happiness. Buddhism too recognizes that human beings are entitled to dignity, that all members of the human family have an equal and inalienable right to liberty, not just in terms of political freedom, but also at the fundamental level of freedom from fear and want, irrespective of whether we are rich or poor, educated or uneducated, belonging to one nation or another, to one religion or another, or adhering to this ideology or that. Each of us is just a human being like everyone else. Then we all know that the institution which the Buddha established was the Sangha, or the monastic community, and it largely functioned on largely democratic lines. And within these fraternity, individuals are equal, whatever their social class or caste origins. And the day-to-day relations, they were conducted on the basis of generosity, consideration, and gentleness towards others. Within the community itself, the decisions were taken by vote and differences were settled by consensus. Thus, the Sangha served as a model for social equality, sharing of resources, and the democratic process. His Holiness went on to elaborate that Buddhism is essentially a practical doctrine. In addressing the fundamental problems of human suffering, it does not insist on a single solution. Recognizing that human beings differ widely in their needs, dispositions, it acknowledges that the path to peace and happiness are many. That's why it has flourished in a diversity of forms, while repeatedly renewing through study and practice its roots in the teaching of the Buddha. This kind of pluralistic approach, in which individuals themselves are responsible, is very much in accord with our democratic outlook. Now, ever since his arrival in India, His Holiness' endeavor was the initiation of the democratic principles in the Tibetan polity through the establishment of a Tibetan democracy in exile. Now, the democratization of the Tibetan political and social system has been the most important achievement of the Tibetan community in exile in the past 5 decades. Now, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to focus on the gradual democratization of the Tibetan polity in exile. First of all, I will talk about the formation of the Tibetan parliament in exile. The Tibetan parliament in exile is also known as the Assembly of Tibetan People's Deputies, ATPD. Now, it was at Bodh Gaya in January 1960 that the Dalai Lama, Bodh Gaya is the place from where I come from, where my university is, that the Dalai Lama laid the foundation of the Tibetan democratic system in exile, which would be rooted in non-violence and peace. And it would strive to combine the traditional elements of the Tibetan cultural and political system along with the elements of the modern liberal democracies. And on 3rd February 1960, The Dalai Lama addressed the representatives from all the regions of Tibet and the various religious traditions. You know, in Tibet, broadly, there are three regions, Amdo, Kham, and Usang. And the four major the religious transitions are, uh, Nigma, then Gelugpa, Sakya, etc. So the what in his address, the Dalai Lama said that the Tibet should not remain as it was before. That Tibet should not remain as it was before. It is important that the country should have a government that is a democratic one, based on the intertwining of religion and politics. Hence, there is a need to institute a parliament whose members should be elected by a popular vote and who should therefore represent the general populace. Ever since, there has been a steady democratization of the Tibetan parliament in exile, which, as I have already told you, is known as the Assembly of People's Deputies. Now, since the process of democratization has begun, the Dalai Lama has emphasized the need for Tibetans to elect their own government, and he has gradually relinquished his power. And you know, on 2nd September 1960, the members who were elected to the Assembly of Tibetan People's Deputy, they took oath of office, and from 2nd September 1975, this day is being celebrated as Tibetan Democracy Day. The Tibetans celebrate their Democracy Day on 2nd of September every year, and this is being celebrated since 1975. Now, the next stage in the democratization of the Tibetan policy is concerned with the drafting of a democratic constitution. The constitution of the Tibetan people in exile, it was drafted in 1961. And this process went on for about 2 years. And finally, on March 10, 1963, this constitution was promulgated. Now, what are the features of this constitution? This constitution consists of the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights, apart from the fundamental rights, and thus hereby democratizing and liberalizing the Tibetan policy. But you know, this constitution was for an independent Tibet, keeping an independent Tibet in mind. So it was decided that modifications and amendments to the constitution would be made only when exile would end and Tibet will become a unified independent nation. And the process of democratization continues ever since. Now I'm going to take you to the next stage of the democratization process, and everywhere it is being guided by the vision of His Holiness, who we all know is the living embodiment of the Buddha. Now, the next stage is the preparation of the Charter of the Tibetan People in Exile. Now, the Charter of the Tibetan People in Exile, it was prepared in 1991. Now, what is this Charter of Tibetan People in Exile? Look, this charter is the supreme law for the Tibetan people who are living in exile, not only in India, but all over the world. So, the constitution was promulgated in 1963, but that constitution was for a independent Tibet. So, for running to the day-to-day affairs, how to run the administration, that was a very important question. And I will tell you that the administration which runs the Tibetan government in exile, that is known as the Central Tibetan Administration, CTA. And the CTA has got its headquarters at McLeodganj in Dharamshala. So on 28th of June 1991, His Holiness granted his assent to the Charter of Tibetan People in Exile. And it was unanimously passed by the 11th Tibetan Parliament in Exile. There were deliberations on 14th July 1991. And this charter, it consists of the Indian law, features of Indian law, because the government is based in India, as well as the international law. And it is binding on all the Tibetan people living in exile, and not only in India, but all across the world. And it spells out the rights and the duties of the Tibetans in exile, And its Article 15 is very important. It says that achievement, it calls for the achievement of a free Tibet by peaceful means. That is the legitimate goal of the Tibetan people. So the charter in this way also spells out the roadmap of Tibet as a free nation in the future. Now I will take you to the next stage. Now, the next stage, the next important stage is the election of the Kalon Tripa. Now I will explain to you who is the Kalon. Kalon means the minister. Kalon Tripa is the prime minister of the Tibetan government in exile. And the cabinet is known as the Kashar. So previously what used to happen was that already we know that the Tibetan parliament in exile that came into being in 1960, and representatives used to be elected to the body. So Dalai Lama, His Holiness, he used to nominate some of the members as Kalons or ministers. But on 11th May 1990, when the 11th Parliament was in session, His Holiness relinquished his right to appoint the Kalons or ministers from amongst the members of the Assembly of Tibetan People's Deputy or the Tibetan Parliament. But His Holiness reserved his right to nominate double the number of members to the Tibetan People's Assembly. And from those members, the members of the assembly, they were to elect the Kalons. Now, so this is the way it was going on. But in 1998, what happened was that the Dalai Lama wrote to the Tibetan parliament that there should be changes in the way the Kalons and the Prime Minister Kalon Tripa is elected. And based on his recommendations of His Holiness, the ATPD amended the articles. ATPD means the Tibetan Parliament pertaining to the election of the Kalon and the Kalon Tripa. Kalon Tripa is the Prime Minister. These were amended in September 2000. Now, what was decided here? Now, here it was decided that Dalai Lama is not going to nominate members to the Tibetan People's Deputies. What he will do is that he will nominate 3 members for the post of the Kalon Tripa, means the Prime Minister. And out of these 3 members, the members of the Tibetan Parliament, they will elect one of them as the Kalon Tripa or the Prime Minister. And the Kalon Tripa, then he will elect his own cabinet. And his cabinet will then be approved by the Tibetan Parliament or the ATPD. So subsequently, this is what happened. And the first Kalon Tripa to be elected in this way was Venerable Samdhong Rinpoche. And he was already the chairman of the Assembly of Tibetan People's Deputy in the 10th Parliament also. And he was also elected in this way in the 11th Parliament. But the Dalai Lama's endeavor of democratization does not stop here. Now in 2001, His Holiness says that I'm still not satisfied with the way the Kalon Tripa is being elected. And he says that the Kalon Tripa or the Prime Minister should be elected directly. And the 12th session of the Tibetan Parliament was in session. And it was on 16th March that the Dalai Lama addressed the Parliament that make provisions, make amendments in order that the Kalon Tripa is directly elected by the Tibetan people. And on the basis of His Holiness recommendations, a 2-step process of election was initiated. That there should be a primary and it should be followed by a final. So on 12th of May, a primary election was held, and Venerable Samdong Rinpoche, the current Kalon Tripa, he got 80% of the votes. Then on 28th of July, the final election was held. And by August 28, when the results were declared, Samdong Rinpoche, who was already the Kalon Tripa, he was elected directly by the representatives. So this was a very important development, that now the Prime Minister is being elected directly. Already the ministers are now being elected by the Parliament. But another very important democratic reform was waiting to be done. Look, in spite of the direct election of the Prime Minister and the election of the ministers, the Dalai Lama still had one very important power. The institution of the Dalai Lama, you should understand, was an institution in which the spiritual power was combined with the temporal power. Means that His Holiness is the spiritual head also, and he was also the political or the temporal head of the Tibetan people. But since 2011, he has relinquished his political authority. So now I'm going to talk about that development. That the Charter of the Tibetan people way back before 2011, it had continued to mandate that the Dalai Lama and the successive Dalai Lamas would continue to be the leader of the Tibetan people and the administration. So now I am going to talk about a very important the ultimate democratization of the Tibetan polity in exile. And this is concerned with the relinquishing of temporal power by the Dalai Lama. Now the Dalai Lama is going to relinquish his temporal power. So in order to fully complete the process of democratization and anticipating the future needs of the Tibetan people, the Dalai Lama was increasingly being convinced that he should relinquish the administrative and political powers as the political and administrative head of the central Tibetan administration to the elected representatives. So on 14th March 2011, the Dalai Lama announced his decision to relinquish his powers as the administrative head and political leader of the Tibetan people to the Tibetan parliament in exile. And he said that this power should not be invested in the people to the Tibetan parliament in exile, and that this power should not be invested in the representatives who are directly elected by the people. So a special session of the 14th Tibetan Parliament in exile was summoned to discuss the development. And on the wishes of the Dalai Lama, the parliament subsequently amended the Charter of the Tibetan people, and the central Tibetan administration was made the sovereign of all the Tibetan people living in exile all over the world, as well as inside Tibet. Now, please pay attention. This was a most significant moment in the history of Tibet, and the history of Tibet, as with it, ended almost the 400-year-old administrative headship of the Tibetan people by the institution of the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama subsequently granted his consent to this amendment in the Tibetan People's Charter. The Tibetan Parliament in exile amended the organization bylaws
Dr. Sir,
to remove
2 minutes.
Yes, just to remove the Dalai Lama's executive authority, making Lobsang Sangye, who was elected the Kalom Tripa. Yes, I'm just concluding. In 2011, its highest leader. Now I'm concluding. A very important factor behind the Dalai Lama's decision is to convey to the world about the full democratization of the Tibetan political process and thereby garner further support of the international community for the Tibetan cause. The combination of the spiritual and temporal power in the one personality of the Dalai Lama was a regressive element of the Tibetan polity, which always raised the question after the Dalai Lama who. With this development, the Dalai Lama is now only the spiritual and the moral authority of the Tibetan people. His temporal power has now been secularized, and the resultant Tibetan political structure is now infused with fresh vigor to wage the Tibetan struggle. A very important consequence of this development is China now has to deal with the whole Tibet nation instead of just the Dalai Lama, making its task further complicated. The flourishing of the Tibetan democracy in exile owes a lot to the vision of the Dalai Lama. Ever since the Dalai Lama came to India in exile, he was of the firm view that the traditional Tibetan polity should gradually progress to a vibrant modern democratic structure. He writes, throughout 1960, I continued to work at reforming the Tibetan administration, and together with the Kashag and others, I began the difficult process of democratization. On 2 September, I inaugurated the Commission of Tibetan People's Devotees. The membership of this organization, the highest legislative body of the government, was open to freely elected representatives of the 3 regions of Tibet. The preparation of the Tibetan draft constitution in 1961 was a means of formalizing the move from theocracy to full democracy. With this purpose and focus, the Dalai Lama has successfully transformed the Tibetan polity from traditional and theocratic to modern and democratic. The development of a vibrant democracy in the Tibetan government in exile has percolated to the grassroots level, with the councils of the settlements also imbibing the democratic ethos. In fact, from time to time, the representatives from the settlements have been called for training at the Central Tibetan Administration at McLeod. Last line, the democratization of the Tibetan political structure has contributed to the progressiveness and morale of the Tibetans in exile. It has provided them with a vision of a liberal and modern Tibet to find its place confidently amongst the countries of the world and hopeful about a just solution to the Tibetan question. Thank you all. Thank you all.